While the apparent hacking by North Korea of Sony Pictures got a lot of coverage recently, another hack attack was taking place that few people heard about. Syrians loyal to the Assad government posed as young women online. They were able to lure members of the rebels to respond. When they did, their computers were hacked. The government was then able to gain access to vital rebel information, including battle plans. Well, the tactic is not uncommon. It even has a name called honeypotting. Well, Paul Levinson teaches media studies at Fordham University. Professor, welcome back to the show. How does this hacking work?
Well, as you were saying, basically people pose as people they're not. And, sometimes you can have men pretending to be women because you really don't know who you're talking to online. Unless you already know the person. Mm-hmm. And, one thing leads to another, and it makes it much easier to get information that you can then use to hack the system. So if, for example, I were foolish enough to talk to a woman that I didn't know at all and felt that she...
And we know you're not that foolish.
Well, maybe I am sometimes, but I try to control it. But, and I gave her information, my birth date, various things that he used to create an identity. Then it becomes relatively easy for a hacker to find out your password and get into that site.
Well, it seems quite clear, Professor, as Stephen Cunto, our previous guest, was talking about here. This is a new kind of warfare here that we're facing now in the world, these cyber attacks. And it's getting a lot of ink, a lot of press. The question I have in this case, outside of the plans for battle, what else are hackers able to get into these days?
Well, this particular group, the Syrian Electronic Army, probably their most famous hacking job was on AP a few years ago, in which they managed on the AP site to get a report issued that the White House had been bombed and President Obama had been injured. And, when something comes through on an AP byline, all the other media take it seriously. So for a few minutes, there was real concern that something had happened at the White House.
So we've got this huge snowball that's careening down a mountainside, that's gaining in size and volume and speed and veracity, and there doesn't seem to be anything that we can necessarily do about this. I'm hearing this from all sorts of technical experts like yourself.
Well, the way I look at this is if you think about biological life, we're subject to getting a common cold, getting the flu, sometimes a more serious illness. That's the way life is. And there are things we can do. There are medications, there are immunizations, but nothing ever wipes out illness completely. It's the same thing online. We can come up with ways of reducing the hacking, but it's a constant cat and mouse game. And if the hackers are good, they can get ahead of us for a brief period of time until we figure out what's going on.
As you know, President Barack Obama attended a cybersecurity summit in California recently. What came out of that?
Well, what came out of that is the focus that we do need to have on this, because the biggest friend of hacking is complacency in the government, in industry, and so all the publicity that this hacking is getting actually is good as far as stopping hacking, because it teaches people to be more careful with whom they share their information and all those things.
Well, I got to tell you, I'm a dinosaur. I don't like any of this cybersecurity stuff or whatever this new technology. I can't stand it. I don't like it. There's not much can be done about it. And you can't tell me any different.
Well, you're entitled not to like it. Nobody likes it. But the question is, do we want to live in a world without computers? If we're accepting digital technology, hacking comes with it.
All right, Professor Paul Levinson, thank you so much, sir.
My pleasure.
All right. Just ahead, a surprising admission about U.S. law enforcement. You're watching a Rise Review.